Tears of the Kingdom ended up being hit or miss for people, and it created a divide in the Zelda fanbase between the young, bright-eyed, freedom-loving Minecraft generation and the stodgy old dungeon curmudgeons like myself. But one thing that everyone can agree on is that Tears of the Kingdom's bosses are way more interesting than Breath of the Wild's, and the Wind Temple boss, specifically, Colgera, has garnered a lot of attention thanks to his music. What makes Colgera's boss theme so exciting? Why is it universally acclaimed? The most important factor here is that there's a big musical moment that people can easily point to and get excited about. The Dragon Roost Island quote that comes sailing in at the piece's climax. But that's not all the piece has going for it. This moment wouldn't work as well as it does without being set up as well as it is. The music follows a 3-part formula of determination, intimidation, and triumph that reflects how the best boss fights feel to play. When you first encounter a boss monster, you're ready to take on the challenge ahead. The opening of most boss fights involves circling the monster, watching for openings, trying to identify a weakness. This is the determination phase. Once you figure out an idea of how to tackle the fight, you charge in to try your strategy. But in a good boss fight, the proper path forward will also put you right in harm's way. As you land blows on your foe, you'll likely be taking hits as well, and as both yours and the boss's health gets whittled away, the battle gets more and more tense. This is the intimidation phase. Of course, if your reflexes and wits outpace the boss's attacks, you'll come out on top, defeating the monster, ideally with just a sliver of your own health left to maximize the rush you feel from emerging from the battle victorious. This is the triumph phase. The Colgera boss fight music is split into 3 phases, moving from one phase to the next each time you land a blow on the monster. And the phases of the music fit perfectly into this pattern of determination, intimidation, and triumph. Let's look through them one by one and see how they capture each specific feeling. The Colgera fight has a great opening, starting off with Link barreling down through the air towards the creature, and the music's pounding bass and driving 16th note strings match the epic scope of the battle. We're in the key of B minor, with the strings playing a repeating 16th note fragment of the B minor scale, and over top, a wandering melody is played by the diza, a Chinese bamboo flute. You can almost feel the war drums pounding with the relentless B bass drone and driving rhythm, but the energy of the piece suddenly shifts when we land on this colorful flat 6 chord G major 7. The melody works from its lower register all the way up to a high B note, and the chords change right on this climax to give it an extra emotional punch. The flat 6 chord in a minor key always sounds poignant and beautiful, and these chords are voiced in a particularly colorful way. The horns move between the 5th and major 7th of the chord and the sharp 4th and 6th, a gorgeous move that shows off all of the flat 6 chord's sentimental potential. After this, the brass brings us back to the fight, with the trumpets blaring this B minor melody for the final phrase of the loop. The trombones and diza answer the trumpet's call with a lower, slower counterline. Both of these lines are just walking up the B minor scale, a shockingly simple move for how effective it is at provoking the feeling of battle. Underneath this, the violins sneak in with a chromatic scale that soars up and comes back down, painting a perfect sonic picture of Link getting blasted up into the sky by these violent gusts of wind. The uncomfortable chromaticism of this figure foreshadows the next section of the music, the Intimidation phase. After landing a hit on Colgera, the music cues a quick scale figure in the strings that modulates to the key of D minor, and the second phase of the music begins. This phase uses a few different techniques to bring the music into a more threatening place. The most obvious one is the change in the accompaniment from pounding on each beat to a more military march-style figure, with the strings and the snare drum using this association with war to evoke a sense of danger. Above this, the Dietze melody and choir chord pads outline shifts between the new tonic D minor and C-sharp diminished 7 chords, the latter giving an extra dark color against the pedaled D bass note. Listen to how these melodic note choices, these C-sharps especially, add a more threatening tone to the music. The situation feels a lot more dire here compared to the first phase of the music, and it's because of these note choices. Where the first phase's melody was derived entirely by the minor scale, the raised sevenths in the second phase introduce the sharp edge of the harmonic minor scale. There is another light excursion to the flat 6 chord in this phase, just like the first, but what follows immediately after drastically raises the stakes. The sincerity of the flat 6 chord, B flat in the key of D minor this time, is undercut by the sudden, jagged, unpredictable rhythms that come in after, with a new 5/4 time signature obscured by interlocking, syncopated shots between the brass, strings, and low piano. Everything about this section is designed to be disorienting. The notes are pulled from the diminished scale to start, the D half-whole diminished scale to be precise, which is another step darker from the harmonic minor scale. But to go one step further, each note in this line is also harmonized a perfect fourth below. The dark melody harmonized in parallel fourths is as much a part of Zelda as throwing a boomerang, it being the key identifying factor in Ganondorf's various themes throughout the series. The jagged melody set to unpredictable rhythmic jabs is a piece of vocabulary introduced to the series with Breath of the Wild's battle theme, and combining these two elements gives us a passage that feels distinctly chaotic. The lines eventually abandon the diminished scale for wilder, more nonsensical chromatic jumps, which makes the return to a straight D minor chord afterwards feel hugely satisfying. The difference between the determination of the first phase and the intimidation of the second can be most clearly seen in the final section of each respective loop, both returning to sit on the tonic minor chord for an entire phrase, while the climbing chromatic scale in the strings sends us soaring into the air. In the first phase, as we heard, we have heroic scalar melody figures in the brass, echoing between the high trumpets and the lower trombones in a call and response pattern. In the second phase, these heroic melodies are traded out for held horn notes in perfect fourths, trading between the root and the flat second of the key. You can feel the sense of danger increase in the second iteration, while keeping enough of the music the same that it feels like a variation on the original theme rather than a brand new piece. After landing your second hit on this crusty skyworm, the music takes the dire scene it set in the previous phase and flips it into a triumphant fanfare. Making a huge key change again, this time to the distant key of G sharp minor, The G-sharp minor tonic chord sets up the new key and then immediately shifts to its major 4 chord, C-sharp major, with the melody highlighting the borrowed raised 6th note right on beat 1 of the bar to emphasize the brightness and hope inherent to this maneuver. The contrast in tone with the previous phase is immediately apparent. The threatening flat 2 chords from before gave way to this hopeful major 4 chord, and this surge of brightness signals the tide turning. Victory is within reach! The fight's not over yet, though, and the music keeps the intensity up with this continued 16th note scale figure in the strings and this erratic, choppy melody line over top. This figure was introduced in the second phase, though there it was harmonized in fourths and placed over these low, rising strings that created a growing sense of dread. In the third phase, this same melody dances over top of a straight G-sharp minor chord and then gives way to the climactic moment of the piece. The famous Dragon Roost Island quote. In case you're a part of the shockingly old group of people born after the year 2000, this 4-bar phrase is a quote from The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Dragon Roost Island has entered the public consciousness as one of the great pieces of video game music, and the original version of the phrase sounds a lot more wistful than what we hear in the Colgera theme. The soft, stepwise harmony and gentle acoustic instrumentation are a far ways away from Colgera's epic fantasy harmony and enormous belting choir, shrieking strings, and bellowing brass. They really milk this quote for all it's worth. Dragon Roost's theme from Wind Waker was repurposed as the Rito Village theme in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, so even if you missed the GameCube era of Zelda, you could still catch that this is a quote. But even if you didn't catch the quote, how could you listen to this and not get fired up? It perfectly captures the feeling of triumphing over a vicious foe. Now, this feeling of triumph is a bit of a trick. Once you land this last hit on the beast, he leads you into thinking you're done by retreating back into his weird purple orb, only to return moments later spikier than ever. After a grand, intimidating string swell, the 3 phases of the fight repeat, with each phase bumped up a half step from the original version to create a subtle sense of rising tension. These 3 phases of music perfectly shape the arc of the fight, capturing Link's resolve, becoming more and more dire as the fight goes on, and then swelling with hope when the end is in sight as you charge towards victory. Determination, intimidation, and triumph. If you're not convinced, just imagine doing this fight without any music. And now get down on your knees and kiss video game music's feet for all that it does for you! Big thanks to patron Daniel Martinez for the suggestion. Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon if you like what you see. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.